everyone. Welcome to the Writer's Realm podcast, and thanks for joining us on the epic adventure we call writing. We're your hosts,
Holly Robilliard,
Austin Matthews,
and Bob Adado. And today we have a special guest with us, Jennifer Maughan. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you're a writer.
Yes, I am. I'm the author of Veiled Gods series, and the first two books in the series, Veiled Voyage and Veiled War, are out now on Kindle Unlimited, and my website as well has some additional copies, and I will also be having Sprayed Edges coming soon.
Ooh,
so
Sprayed Edges.
those are really cool.
So
You're fancy.
Like
that's fancy.
I'm going to have questions about those in a little
Yes.
bit, but I'll let you get settled first.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We'll see how we're supposed to be talking about writing unreliable narrators, but now
and
immediately
we've already gotten distracted.
Yeah, already we immediately
Make a list
need to talk
of all
about
the
something
things.
else. So what's your genre? What is this? Fantasy or?
So it's an action adventure fantasy, and there is romance in it. But I like to tell people that it's a little bit of an introduction into fantasy if it's not quite your genre or your cup of tea. It's really light as you go in, and then it kind of ramps up a little bit more towards the series as the series progresses.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of fun.
How fun is that? Okay, Veiled Gods 1 and 2. They're on Amazon, you said?
Yep, on Amazon and Kindle Unlimited.
Okay. And then where can we find you?
So you can find me on Instagram at Jennifer Maughan Author, and I am on TikTok, but like very rarely. I just like post and leave and let the chaos reign. And that's jennifer.maughan.author. And then I am on Facebook, but I don't ever really do anything there.
Yeah. I don't know if we have anyone yet who I'm all over Facebook, but I haven't heard that yet.
I need to, because I feel like Facebook's like an untapped treasure hoard.
I'm going to cut in right now and say it absolutely is, because I have experienced this over the past 2 weeks. I've not done any marketing or any reach outs on Facebook. I don't even post on Facebook, even though it's linked to Instagram. And I just recently was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. And I'm going to hop on a couple of Facebook groups and just start getting some ARC readers and things like that. And I have gotten like more people, and I had more conversations with people from Facebook in just like a couple days compared to on other social media platforms.
That's amazing.
And I was just like blown away by that. Like,
well, it's crazy to me. I feel like I have the same number of friends on both Facebook and Instagram. And every time on Instagram, you know how it tells you at the top, like the little green dots on who's on. Yeah. There's just like a handful. But if I'm on Facebook, I'm like scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And I'm like, why are these people on Facebook? I thought it's dead, but it's not. It's alive and kicking.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
and here I thought it was like MySpace at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. Who has a MySpace page? Me. But so Jennifer Maughan, now how do you spell your last name? Just for those that are not watching YouTube.
It is spelled Maughan.
Okay, so Jennifer Maughan, and that'll be like at Jennifer Maughan on Instagram and Facebook and everywhere else.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jennifer Maughan Author.
Got it. Okay, Jennifer Maughan Author. Okay, Holly, what's your question?
Oh, yes. Okay. I need to know more about these sprayed edges, because I would love to eventually have sprayed edges. I would love if all of the books on my shelves have sprayed edges. So please tell us how you went about getting them done, and if you would like to, where you got them done or what the whole process was.
Yeah. So I have so honestly, I feel like everything is through networking. It's about like who you know.
Yeah.
Because that's just how I find anyone and everyone. So my best friend Jill, she also has a book out called her first one's Bright Ones, her second one is Shadow Men, and it's an urban fantasy, but we're in the same writing critique group. And so she referred me to her cover artist, Melissa Stone. And Melissa became my cover artist because she was new, starting out, and she's incredibly gifted. And she's just amazing. And so I try to refer her to anyone and everyone out there, because you're going to want to. She's a hidden treasure, and so I love that. People almost don't know about her, but at the same time, I'm like, we need to get you out there because she's amazing. But it was a connection through her. His name is, or his TikTok. She's more active on TikTok, but it's Moon Fae Books, and he does edges. So my friend Jill, she showed me her edges on her book, and they're colored and like they're just stunning and high def. And I was like, who is this? And like, give me his information. So his name is Kevin, and he's going to be doing my sprayed edges, and they look so pretty. So I'm really excited.
Oh, so do you have to, like, do you have the physical copies at your house and then you ship them to him, or what does that process look like?
Yeah, so it actually took me longer to have them shipped to me and then shipped to him. So when I ordered them through a company called Ingram Spark, I just had them shipped directly to him to kind of just cut out the extra shipping fees, because I'm like, I'm already paying for shipping. So he's a little bit unique where he has the ability, because sprayed edges typically are just, it's like ink. It's like a tiny little spray brush. But he also has like a digital print where he can do it at a really high, fine, I don't know how he does it, but it's like, it's basically like printed, but you get a lot of detail in there. And so he's doing that on one side, and then the other side are sprayed.
That's awesome. Wow.
And is that
Kevin, I'm coming for you.
So is Kevin at Moon Fae Books, is Moon Fae spelled F-A-E, or how is that spelled?
Yes, I'll have to like grab my phone and like say it. But yeah, Moon Fae Books, I believe.
Okay.
So it's his logo is black and white.
Okay. And are you doing these like by the 100, or I don't, is it like a limited edition of like 50 or something, or?
Yeah, it's a limited edition. I'm probably only doing about 10 each, mostly because they're pricey. Like they're pricey to get done, and so yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
No, this is great. Who cares about unreliable narrators? We're going to talk about this stuff, but
let's do it.
No, because I'm doing a Kickstarter really soon. Like I wanted it done this month, but it's not going to happen. So probably next month. But I looked into the sprayed edges thing, and I could do it myself, which I don't know what I'm doing, first of all. And so it's almost like you want to give this to somebody who does know what they're doing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yes. And I would say, like, if you're going to do this for other people or your whole career, then I would say invest in it and learn. But for now, go with Kevin. He's amazing.
I will. No, and these kids, I'm sorry. I mean, I'm the oldest one here, so everyone's a kid to me. But I'm horrible at formatting my books. Like it drives me right up the wall. And I told them I found a formatter, and it's $100. Fox Formatting. That'll be my plugin for resources. Fox Formatting. Her name's Lisa Fox. She does amazing work, and like I got it back in a day and a half, and it comes with like all the different types that you're gonna need, print and all the different ebooks and distributors, and it's amazing. So it's easily the best money I've ever spent.
Yeah.
So I think you're right, Jennifer, about just handing it over to somebody who knows what they're doing, right?
Well, plus they can do it in like you said, they could do it in a day, where, you know, it took me like a week to figure out mine. So like now I can do it in a couple hours, which is nice, but it's still, it's their job. They know what to do.
Yeah. That's exciting. Good for you. Yeah, I'm glad you're here. That was a great topic. But we're done for the night. Thank you, everyone.
We're networking. Networking.
That's it. No, like you said, right? It's who you know, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions, guys?
Before we get into the topic.
Yeah. That was excellent. Thank you very much. We have to. Oh, do you have one with you? Or no?
No, they're getting shipped to me.
Oh, okay.
I'm getting them soon. I'm like so excited.
Let us know. They'll probably be up on your Instagram though, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, good.
All the more reason for people to go follow you. Yeah, they can see it.
Yeah, everyone go follow Jennifer, and so you can find out what these. Yeah, in case you have never heard of these sprayed edges, they are amazing. Very, very fun. And also a step up from that is actual hand painted edges. Have you seen those?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's something I've thought about, but once again, I don't know.
Yeah. Or like the gold and silver leafed edges are so nice too.
Yeah.
Gilded, yeah. Yeah, those
Yes.
are beautiful. All kinds of different things. So, okay, folks, I'm sorry. Here we go. We're gonna get into
Okay, back into the
unreliable narrators. All right, so Jennifer, you have written your Veiled God series. Is how about this? I always start off like, well, what's an unreliable narrator? Just in case no one has ever heard of that. What is this? What are we talking about?
So an unreliable narrator is someone that is telling a story, but they're not telling you all of it, or they're hiding things. They're they're not necessarily lying. They're omitting, I would say, but there's quite a bit of craft to it. And if you can do it correctly, it's a lot of fun.
Wow. And you wrote some books like that, or the Veiled God series, or kind of?
Yes.
Nice.
So this is a bit of a spoiler, but
right. I know that's the thing.
my main character.
Yeah.
Pretty much
you
all
don't have
of
to tell
my main
how
characters.
unreliable.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So my main characters in this series and then a couple others are unreliable narrators. And this one was pretty fun because my editor, she was reading over it and she's like, I always like to pick up those hints, and she likes, being able to figure it out. And she's like, there was 2 instances where you like totally surprised me. And that's like my end goal, which is why I feel like unreliable narrators is the best way to do it. And I feel like Sarah J. Maas does a phenomenal job of that. And I'm sure there's more authors, but I haven't read many books in the past 9 months. So
okay.
Oh man, I will have to say, like, one of my favorite unreliable narrator story. It's a movie instead of a book, but Memento. It's just such a beautifully done unreliable narrator.
Oh my gosh. Well, the twist at the end and
beginning.
I'm like, that movie's been out for 20 years. I could say it,
It's still
but
so
like
good.
the fact that he's like, you can pick anyone with those initials and it would, it would get you that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she's going to be going out killing people like
so
just
good.
over and over.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was really fun.
So so are these in first person? Are these told in first person then?
Yeah, so this series is first person present tense, which I feel so bad. That was the one thing I really struggled with until my editor. Tenses are terrible.
Yes.
I'm all over the place.
Right.
And I'm like, that's why I pay an editor.
Right.
so because I think for maybe like 7 years I wrote in past tense, and so when I switched, it was like on a whim. I'm like, I'm suddenly gonna go to present tense, and the poor woman.
That's the only thing I've ever written in the present tense.
Yes, it's hard because you keep wanting to add ed at the end, and there's a few words you can use it, but like the rules are just random. So
gosh, it already sounds exhausting.
Yeah, I never want to try that.
So whatever you're writing in, whatever tense it is, just stick to that. Don't change it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do second person future tense.
Right.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. But it was the right decision to switch over to first person because it is there's a lot of action that happens in this series. And when you're writing in first person, you're like in the thick of the action. And so it keeps things moving quickly. So it was a good choice.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I find tenses so I was doing a comparison today for a social media post, and I was looking at the All Souls trilogy, which is by Deborah Harkness, and I didn't really realize it. I've read this story or read the series a couple times, and I didn't realize it at the time, but in the first book, she actually alternates. Most of it's in first person, and then she does a few passages in third person. And he said, that she's done it so well because, I didn't even, I was so immersed in the story that I didn't really pick up on it. But I'm like, I don't know, like to be able to do that is just fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I was also gonna an author that came to mind is J. Christoph.
I've heard of him.
I don't know if you've heard, I think his books, the Illuminati Files or the I'm really bad with the names, you guys. I'll don't worry. Say half of the name and someone will get it. But it's a young adult sci-fi, and boy, is it twisty. Like, and I'm like usually pretty good I mean, you learn it as an author, but when you're
Mm-hmm.
following a story, you're like, oh man, I don't know how they're going to get into this. And the twist comes and it's just phenomenal. So,
well, I have to ask what I feel, what got you into the unreliable narrator theme? Like that's what you want to do.
So it's kind of interesting. I think it was mostly, I just wanted to surprise my readers and I wanted to be able to throw the plot twist. But one thing that I found that was frustrating when I was reading, even some big author names, is when I was reading, I was like, I already know what's going to happen. Like, this is a little bit frustrating. Like, had they hid this part or this portion or this conversation, they really could have made it more surprising at the end. And that's when my friends and I in our critique group, we were discussing unreliable narrators, and I'm like, oh, that's what it is. Like that's the definition for what I want to do.
Yeah.
So it's been really fun. And like really it was just kind of like a study on how to do that and how to do it to where you're really subtle about it.
Okay.
Yeah,
well, why don't we I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say the challenge I would say in doing that is you have to really be able to weave it into the storyline where it seems really innocuous. It's just like one of those fun facts that you're learning and throughout and which is great for fantasy because you're world building.
Yeah.
And so you can just kind of casually mention something and the reader will pick it up and move on and, just think you're building on, but they don't realize how important that little clue is until later.
How fun is that? That does sound fun.
So to work something like that out, because again, like you said, Sarah J. Maas, and that's her Throne of Glass series, I think is by far her best series, just because she does that, and that's what makes the whole series so good, I think. And because by doing that, it adds an entire different layer to your characters. But in order to drop those little cookie crumbs everywhere, so obviously you have to be a planner, right? Because you need to know what's happening way down the line so that you can think of what you're going to drop all the way back here. And I feel like that must be a really difficult challenge because you have to really think everything through. So how do you deal with something like that?
So this is one thing that I feel strongly about for myself, and this is just how I operate. So I have ADHD, so I'm usually like all over the place when it comes to things. And my sweet, dear friends that have been, on this journey with me for 8+ years, I would throw out all these ideas and they'd get, it was just like drinking a fire hose when talking to me because I throw out all these details on start to finish. But they're like, just get your story down, just finish it start to finish and then tell us about it. Because I would change it so much, mostly because when I was writing it, all the ins and outs would change. But again, start to finish, like my starting point and my end point would remain the same. But when often I let my characters have freedom in my head with coming up with these, different paths to get there. And that's what makes it really twisty and really fun. And I think that's the beauty of having the brain that I have is, this fun idea pops up and let's see where it goes. And oh, wait, it came back to where I needed it to go. So it's a lot of great.
Nice. So what are some key elements? Unreliable narrator. You mentioned fun, so it has to be fun.
Yeah.
Twist, right? And then you're kind of mentioning like some clues, but what are some other stuff like? And is this something, Jennifer, like when you're writing it out, when you're planning all this, do you have to like list it out? I'm going to hit these points. I'm going to hit these beats.
Yes.
So what would that look like?
So I love that question. That's so great. So I would say you kind of really need to pick what you're going to be the reveal at the end. And so whatever that reveal is, you need to kind of hide it. And you can pick what's really innocuous, when you have someone that's traveling from one area of the world to another. They're going to have cultural differences. They're going to have language differences. They're going to have, pretty much everything about them will be different. But what do you want to highlight throughout your book? that will come out into play later. And some of them might just be for fun, you know, just to throw in there. But you might want to have other things that are a little bit more heavy and weighted. But I would have to say that what makes it even better is when you layer what those reveals are. So you have your first reveal, but then there's more to stack on later in the series.
To build on, or
yes.
Okay.
That, and you might be able, it's like hard because they don't want to give away too much.
Okay.
But as a reader, one thing I actually found interesting, because I think I'll just highlight this because it's just what's coming up in my head. But in Crescent City, at the very beginning of the first book, she leaves. That's literally the only freaking clue. And it made me so mad because she didn't leave any other clues. That was the only clue. And so I'm going along, like reading into everything, like trying to figure it out. And then when it happens at the end, I was almost like really annoyed because I'm like, you kind of did a crappy job on that. Like, make it fun. Because at that point I was getting frustrated where I'm like, what are we looking for? Because nothing is working out. And so,
because like that's the thing, is it's not hard to surprise people. It's like if you're writing, you know, a fantasy novel and then a spaceship shows up and kills everybody. Like, that's surprising. But if you didn't lay any groundwork for it, you didn't earn it, and it's just terrible.
Yeah. So it was just kind of interesting. I mean, she did lay groundwork, but it wasn't. I don't know. I was just like, really? That was what you went with? I don't know. Maybe. And the thing is, I'm like, she's amazing. I can't criticize her, but at the same time, my brain is like, what?
Yeah.
It's okay to criticize everybody.
Yeah.
You know.
You're a reader. Of course you can criticize. We all criticize each other's work.
But, you know, I would have to say, pick one or two things. And it can even just be one thing. And you can hide it by being really obvious about it to where the reader's like, okay, you know, we get it. And then you can, you know, dive into the importance of it later, or you can just hit it 2 or 3 times. But my rule would be hit it at least 3 times to where the reader can kind of, because you have to remember it, you know, it can't just magically happen. So it's got to be out there.
Did you hear that, Rebecca Yarros? She if you guys don't know, there was she dropped a huge spoiler in her book, and she said it was so obvious that she thought everybody would get it. And to this day, there's no one who is like affirmatively been like, yes, this is what it is. Like, people it's just gone right over all of the, you know, however many thousands or whatever, hundreds of thousands of millions or whatever people that have read this book, nobody knows.
I've only read the first book. I have not read the second one yet. So, but everyone, like, I was busy. I was getting my books out. And so when the second one came out, like, everyone was hating on it. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to read this book until the third one is out. And then I'm going to see what people feel about that one.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, that like you said, so for me, again, Throne of Glass is my favorite. And she just does such a good job with the character of like, here's a little bit of information, here's a little bit of information. And you don't realize at the time, because it's so subtle, that you're just like, it's just like world building or whatever. It's just, you know, a little bit of character information until you get to the end. And then you're like, oh my gosh, all, you know, 25 things all come together at once. And it just makes so much sense when you know about it. And it's like, that's what I think is mind blowing for readers, because they're just like, what?
Well, and I think the beauty of it too is she laid the groundwork for it back, you know, way back. And she did casually, you know, just casually mention a couple things to where people kind of, they're like, oh yeah, because the rule in with writing, I'm sure, as you guys all know, is you want to mention things to kind of, you know, if you depending on how people want to structure their plot and their story, you can have a spreadsheet where you have the different characters, and after so many chapters, you want to remind people, the reader, that this character exists and what, you know, important relationship would be to the character, to the main character. And so I think Sarah J. Maas kind of did it. And she was, when it came together at the end, I was like, what is happening? This is great. I love it. I'm all for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the narrator, right? They're allowed to still have internal thoughts about these things, or do they have no thoughts whatsoever? Or is it like by their actions that you leave these little cookie crumbs? Because obviously even if it's an internal thought, it spoils it for the reader, right? So they have to just be like complete liars and just let their actions speak for them, or?
Well, I would have to say you just have to word it correctly. And I think that's something that really can be overlooked, because you can give it away really easily. But if you word it correctly, even in internal thought, you know, how you describe someone or your relationship to someone, those things can be, you know, really what is their relationship, or is it deeper than what it is, or is it more shallow than what it is? And you just have to be really careful in what you word it. So in my book series, I'll give one away, but one is languages. And, you know, languages come to be a big part in this story. And, you know, I just had to be very careful on how I worded it. So my goal was so that when people would get to the end, if they wanted to go back and reread it, they'd be like, oh, there it is. There are all these clues that I missed.
So you want to oh, sorry.
No, sorry, you go ahead first.
So you want to like drop a clue, but not gift wrap it. Like you want to talk about like what you're talking about, like the language, you know, I'm giving your example. Like you want to, the way you write it is you want to put it in there because it's part of the story, but not necessarily like you're not going to beat people over the head with it, or, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think it's exactly the way you're talking about, like whatever you're going to add in there, we don't want to draw too much attention to it, but it'll be there, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's always like a delicate balance of like, you want it to be obvious if like looking back, but it's like if it's obvious the first time through, it's like, oh, well, then it kind of ruins the whole experience.
Yeah.
I think an excellent example of this is Austin. When he sent us in our critique group, he gives us these articles or these letters, and he had a secret message hidden in the wording of these letters, and we didn't know until someone had mentioned it, and like in the letters had been like someone had commented and said, yeah, there's like these secret messages hidden, and then you go back and it's like, oh my gosh, how did I, you know, it's just obvious, but if you don't know, then you just miss it.
Yeah.
I would be the one to miss it though. I would be like, this is a nice letter. Thank you.
Well, to be fair, there's literally a footnote in the letter, like in the book, that's like, hey, this is what's going on. And then it's the only time it's mentioned. But then in future letters, it does the same code. So it like taught you how to use the code. And in the future letters, it's still got that same code going on. And you have to go, oh, hey, maybe there's more codes going forward in order for you to follow the whole conversation.
I like it. Like, that's Austin. That's literally perfect unreliable narrator right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's like somebody, there's like another person that does end notes that calls into question. They're like, this footnoter is maybe unreliable too. And so it's just like layers on layers of like, I don't know who's telling the truth here.
I love it. That makes it extra twisty, and just so when the reveal does happen, it's like almost a punch to the face in a good way.
I was reading Agatha Christie's The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, and that's obviously she's an excellent writer, so that was definitely an unreliable narrator. And with Holly's question about what do you do with their thoughts and stuff, I was getting the idea that that's his lie. I can't talk. That's his lie that he believed. So that's what we were reading. You know what I mean? Like when you're like, no, this is the way it happened. This is the way it happened. When it's not, and we don't know that, the reader doesn't know that. But like your narrator should probably, I don't know if that's what you're using, Jennifer, where, I don't know. I mean, obviously somebody's hiding something, but your narrator should be, like I said, just believing that lie. And that's what you're going to keep telling yourself, right? Like everyone that's going to ask you a suspected question, he's going to have that exact same answer so that he gets it right. You know what I'm saying?
And that's, I think, another phenomenal example of an unreliable narrator.
Yeah.
So,
all right, hear me out. I have this idea.
Okay.
Tell me if I'm on track with how this is supposed to work. So imagine if you have a horror novel and you have two characters, right? Two different characters, and one's a detective and one's a murderer.
Okay.
And so you have these two completely different plot lines going along, and then you find out at the end they're actually the same person. But that person, you know, like maybe it's like a split personality thing, or like, you know, because that's way more fun for a horror than a double life, right? So you could go back through and like leave little drops throughout it, right? About like hinting at each other's like things that they're both noticing, for example, or things that they have in common, or like little quirks that they might both have. Like, or like the same piece of clothing, for example, like, you know, noticing the same clothing twice or something like that, that would hint at, you know, that final reveal at the end. Is that kind of how that would work?
I think that's perfect because, you know, you think about it when people, one of the things that they teach when you're writing as an author is you want to have different voices for different characters. So if you have like the same voice for all of your characters, then people just kind of chalk it up to where, well, it's really the author that's coming through. It's, you know, she's not giving a ton of different personality to those characters. But if you're doing that strategically, then when it does come to the end, they'll be like, oh, wait, she actually knew what she was doing. And it'd be really, you know, really cool to see that in the background. But even something as small as like the key bowl, you know, they walk in and drop their keys because that's just such an innocuous thing all of us do when we get home, but they could both be doing it. And so people might think, oh my gosh, like they both have the same mannerisms or they both do the same thing, but they won't necessarily put together that they're the same person.
Or use like the same misquoted phrase, like instead of nip it in the bud, they like both say nip it in the butt, and you're like, well, that's maybe the author just doesn't know, and then it's like, oh no, they're just both wrong about the same thing.
Right.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah. Shutter Island. I saw the movie. I haven't read the book, but that's Holly. That's exactly what you're talking about. Murder and detective being the same person. I like that because that's like you mentioned horror. I'm thinking of like psychological thriller, or maybe even not urban thriller, domestic thriller. You know, where I think that's where that fits. And now this is interesting because Jennifer, I've never even thought about an unreliable narrator in a fantasy book, but I've never read the Sarah J. Maas series. I'm sorry, but I didn't know that was what that was about. Not what it was about, but what, you know, that theme, I guess we could say. So you really opened my eyes to this. I always thought it'd be a thriller. You know, I thought it would, you know, or like a Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. That was like a domestic thriller. And then like I said, Agatha Christie had her, so it's kind of a mystery, right? So is that with your books? Is there some sort of a mystery that there's a purpose? Maybe I'm asking too many spoiler questions here. But
no, you're good.
But like, so you have some mystery going on in your series?
I do. So so it's called the Veiled Gods, because there's these gods that had a war 1,000 years prior, and now they're all gone. But they're generals, people that they had gifted, you know, special abilities to create their armies to fight one another. They're still around and they're still fighting. And so there's, you know, people that have a little bit of religious ties, not necessarily religious. I try to keep it a little bit vague on that. I know it can be a touchy subject for people, but they kind of have their deities, you know, that were these old gods, and they still kind of believe in them. And one of the main gods is the mother, and the other one is Ertun. And Ertun was just, you know, creating war and havoc, and the mother comes in with her armies to kind of wipe out. So in this society that she had what's called the mother's heir. And she was kind of like the peaceful ruler. She was a little bit, not necessarily like a political ruler, but like a religious ruler. And she went missing 400 years prior. And so that's kind of like a background theme in the book. that it's kind of talked about. It's kind of the reason why there's tension. There's a little bit of enemies to lovers, and it's interesting. I like to play with tropes a little bit, but I like to do it in my own fun way. So I feel like, everyone's like, I hate insta love, and I'm like, well, she has insta love, like insta attraction, but then it quickly turns to insta ooh, like, oh crap, you're not who I thought you were.
Right.
And then you have a little bit long period of time where they get to know each other, so it turns into enemies to lovers. But then that shifts later on in the series, and I won't give it away, but I kind of did. But it's just more fun because, like, what are they gonna do? But you kind of have these elements at play that really, because I hate the miscommunication trope. But what I do really like is
what is that?
So miscommunication trope is just something where it's like, you said a phrase and I thought you meant this, but really you meant this. And now I hate your guts, and we're going to spend a whole book where we hate each other just because of this one thing.
Just kidding.
And
that sounds like marriage. No, that was bad.
it was funny because when people say that, I'm like, welcome to married life.
Well, and like, that's the thing though, is that the problem with the trope isn't that like there's miscommunication, because that's normal. But the problem is that it is just there to manufacture drama for an entire book that has no other drama. And so it's like, realistically, it would be a conversation and like, hey, sorry, I thought you meant this whenever you said that. And so there's just, you just are open and honest about miscommunication, and you move on, and your relationships may be better for it. It doesn't cause a war or whatever it's going to.
Oh, yes, it is.
Suddenly 1,000-year blood feud.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right, I'm pretty sure, like Jay, or wasn't it R.R. Martin? Got some of his. My brothers try to get me to watch this, Game of Thrones.
Sex and violence. Go ahead. Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm like, I'll watch the first and last episode of every season, because that just tells me how it starts and who. At the end, it tells me who died and who survived.
Yeah.
And then I watched, I think, the last season, because that was,
oh, I'm sorry.
That's the worst. The worst part.
Really.
I said that, and I'm like, that was fine.
So, well, it's interesting though, because like, isn't Game of Thrones based off of the War of the Roses, like the real historical happenings of that? Plus magic and dragons.
So I'm a big history buff, and that's something that I've really enjoyed, like, just learning about throughout the years. And so when my brothers were telling me, they're like, oh my gosh, like, this one thing that really happened in history, he has that in this. And I'm like, oh yeah, like, I've heard of that, right? Like, it's he's like, everything that's in the book, happens in history. And I'm like, I know that, but why do we want to make a show about it?
Because it's dragons.
It's good.
Dragons. I know. Really, that's what it is. They want dragons.
We're all there for Tyrion Lannister. That's what we're there for.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
No, Arya Stark. That's what I'm here for. Assassin.
I feel like
the true king.
Snow. Who was the girl that was like, you know nothing, Jon Snow? What was her name? She died. They all died.
Right.
She was like, she's his in real life wife.
His wife, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. She anyways, I don't know how many clips where I heard her say that, and I'm like, is that literally all she says in the series?
I mean, it's all that Jon Snow needs to hear through the entire series.
Yeah. So. You know nothing. Well, and it's so like I said, I watched like the beginning, like the first episode.
Yeah. And
it was like the White Walkers, and we get to the end, and like I thought, okay, this is not a spoiler. Is it Arya Stark?
Yes.
The ninja one? And I was like, that's Arya. She's a ninja. Yeah. But like how she ended it, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. But then the war at the end in the Red City, is that what it is? Red Castle, Red something.
Yeah.
That
Red
was
Keep or something. Yeah.
The Red
Keep. The Red Keep, that's what it is. I was like, I could see this coming.
Yeah.
But how everyone died, I was like, the Hound needs to live. Nope.
No.
That's the problem with season 7 is that like it ends in such a predictably terrible way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Cersei needed to win because nobody would have liked it, and that's exactly why she needed to win.
Yeah, that was like the whole series.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and I was just like, why didn't you just have them all retreat and then they all had to fight them together? Yeah. I don't know how, but I mean, they were all I'm like very far removed from this. This is
Uh-huh.
like a super outsider perspective on
Yeah.
this whole
Hey,
series.
that's-
My brothers are gonna kill me when they hear this
Hey,
because
to
they're
be
gonna be like,
fair,
no, there's reasons. But
Right.
maybe
I'm
the
just
White
like,
Walker should have just won.
if you start with something like the White Walkers, and that is such a huge deal. It's why they have the wall. It's the whole like winter is
Right.
coming. Like that's
Yeah.
the whole main theme. I'm like,
Yeah.
you end with that. You
Right.
don't like, oh wait, we're gonna end it a little bit early, and
It
then
just poof.
yeah. So
It
I
just
think it was
poof.
fine.
I was laughing. So we're watching the House of Dragons right now. And at one point they go to the wall and they're like, oh, like we can't send men to help you because we have to wait at the wall. And I'm like, spoiler alert, for the next 200 years, you're going to be there waiting. Because winter's not coming as soon as you think it is.
And then winter's gonna end like real quick, actually.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
my
actually.
Winter was coming for hundreds of years, and then winter's gonna end in like in an evening.
I thought it was like the coolest line for so long until this like prequel came out and I realized just how long they were saying it for. And then I was like, wow, like you guys, after like the first like 50 years or 100 years, you weren't like, it's probably not coming. Like,
Well, they had to like wait until, you know, because like dragons are the perfect defense. So they had to wait till all of those were gone. And then winter was waiting. That's what it was doing. It wasn't coming. Winter is waiting.
Winter is waiting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a funny story, and it's so inappropriate. I love it. So the very first episode, Game of Thrones, right? Season 1, episode 1. My buddy loaned me. This is back in the day when we had to watch movies on these discs and DVD, and he handed me the whole thing. He's like, dude, watch this. It's so amazing. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm into it. And I put it in. I'm in bed with my laptop. I'm watching it. It's playing, you know. And then my wife she's done getting ready. She comes and sits in bed at exactly the same moment as these two siblings start banging each other. And it was so, the timing was impeccable. I'm just sitting there watching. I'm like, oh, geez, and then she sits down. What are you watching? I'm like, oh my God. So it didn't go well. Yeah, no, I couldn't watch the rest of the...
If I had started with season 1, I would not have enjoyed the show. I think my first episode was season 5, episode 1. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then I went back and watched it. So,
yeah.
But I also love spoilers.
I feel like it was good mental prep having started watching it right when the last season was coming out, because I was hearing about the red wedding, or is it the red wedding? I don't know. The wedding.
Yeah.
Where everyone dies,
right.
And Arya arrives like right at the end. And so like there was a couple like episodes where my brothers were like, you cannot skip this one. You've got to watch it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, I'll watch it. And I was like, why would you have me watch that episode? Like,
guys are so different. Yeah.
Guys like are violence. So different, but
yeah,
I
like
really
violence.
love the Hound. Like he was my all-time favorite character in the whole thing. And I think when he was sitting at the fire with Arya, and I think it's Arya, or maybe it's the redhead, the sister. When he's talking about his brother, and she's like, why do you hate him so much? And he's like, it's not that he could beat me, it's that he pushed me in the fire and he was my brother. And you just had some humanity come out in him, because, you know, so far he's this horrible, you know, killer, and but you realize he has a lot of pain.
Right.
So
deep emotional wounds.
Emotional wounds. And those make the best villains in people's minds, but then in other people's eyes, they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know we're really deep on this tangent. And
sorry.
I was just gonna say I super have been enjoying House of the Dragons, and I might enjoy it more than Game of Thrones, and I might be the only person in existence to say that. But I also just love Matt Smith playing villainous after watching him be the Doctor, which is interesting too, because Arya was on, Maisie Williams was also like one of the companions on Doctor Who. So it's just it's just interesting to have both of them in it. So
yeah, I've heard it's great. So my brothers were like, you got to watch that one. And I'm like, I'll wait till a few seasons come out.
That's fair.
Well, like what's that? Like, so like Game of Thrones is the complete opposite of what we're talking about as well, which is really funny. Because I feel like they don't leave anything. Like there's throughout the series, they don't give you like any little bits of information that make you think that these things are coming. It's just like suddenly it's like, oh,
Boom.
okay, that's what we're doing now. I see.
Okay.
And so that is kind of, I think, what upsets people is because they like that's like the number one rule in writing is it's okay to have something happen, but make sure it's not like out of the blue that suddenly appears. You need to hint at it somewhere.
I'm going to disagree.
You, of course you are.
Austin's
I know,
gonna,
it's my role.
he's coming
So
in.
here's the thing is that the clues that he's giving you through it is the other things you didn't expect. And so the fact that you didn't expect those other things is constantly having you on edge. And I think that justifies it. If that's the way that you are writing the entirety of it.
Okay.
So if it's just like, hey, everything had clues and then suddenly everything changed at the end and there was no clues to it, that's when it feels cheap. But like whenever you're like, you know what? Into season 1, killing the person you thought was the protagonist of the series, and we're going to keep killing people that you like throughout the entire series, and you're not going to see it coming.
Austin just likes killing people.
He does.
Yeah,
he really does.
I mean, it's fun.
I mean, his characters, not people.
That too.
I was gonna say, I think too, because my brother's deep dive into this, you guys, but he's like, these are some YouTube's videos that are like the background. He's like, if you're not gonna watch the series, he's like, you got to watch this, background information from the books. Like she just explains the books. And I probably should have just read the books, but she just was going so deep into like why the Lannisters pay their debts or why the Trident is called the Battle of the Trident, and like all of the backstory that you're getting before Game of Thrones when it starts. So I think that's why in the Red Wedding, whatever, the wedding where everyone dies, when they start playing that song, the mom's the only one who's like, this is not good. And everyone else is just kind of, bumming around. But I'm like, not even the readers or the watchers, the people that are the viewers, that's who they are. Yeah. Not even the viewers know what the significance is of that song. And so when you have someone, it's like, oh crap, this is not good.
Right.
You're cluing in, but then someone comes in and stabs a pregnant lady. And I'm like, I'm out.
Now, so that's a very weird justification too for the end of season 1 is that main actor, Sean Bean, if he doesn't die in something, it is an exception. Yeah. And so the fact that they chose him is a clue already that he's going to die.
Yeah, somebody's going to die.
Yeah.
Somebody you like is going to die.
I've always wanted to read the books as well because I think that would make up for it, right? Because you're right. You can only put so much in a show. And you also, when you're watching something, you wouldn't pick up on you wouldn't necessarily see things that you would pick up on in a book, right? Because you're kind of just gloss over the whole scene and focus on the one character when they're right in front of you. Whereas in a book, it takes you line by line through what's happening. So there might be a lot more in there to pick up on. And you would get that backstory as well.
Yeah. Well, I think one of them, this is all I remember, is the old lady in this first season when she's up at the north, when she's talking to Bram when he was in bed, and is Bram I don't know, the crippled kid who's like laid up. She was telling him like about the stories that she heard, and she talked about like the spiders, like these huge spiders that were like Arctic spiders, which makes no sense. But then my brother he's like, watch this YouTube video. Like Arctic spiders. And I'm like, why aren't the Arctic spiders in there? Why aren't they crawling up the wall? Yeah. Like why did we leave it out? We hinted at it in the first
time.
Season.
Yep.
Yeah. So. Screenplays and novels very different. Yeah.
Very different.
Very different. But so thank you for joining us with what our opinion is on Game of Thrones
and House of Dragons.
And House of Dragons.
And House of Dragons.
I haven't watched any of those. So
I think it came out at a great time. So I've been querying lately, and I feel like every agent I look at is like, if you have anything on dragons, let me know. If you've got a book on dragons, let me know. And I'm like, it's just like it's like the hot topic right now. Of course,
dragons are also always awesome. So
true. Yes, this is very true. It's funny how we need to start making like a physical chart to see like what trends come back around when, right? Because they
that would actually be a
like
really fun project.
Yeah,
Wow.
see? Like dragons were pretty cool a while ago, and then they kind of phased out a little, and now they're like all the rage again.
Yeah, and
Austin,
then
you're gonna
also
be right
looking
in
at like,
line. I was gonna say Harry Potter, like the magic school is gonna be coming back around soon, and I know
just
you've
in
got
time
that in
for
the
Eldritch
works.
Horror Magic School.
Another 10 years, it'll be steampunk, and I can sell my books. Somebody will
just keep writing.
Yeah,
just keep
just keep
writing,
writing.
and then
Yeah.
all the
Just keep
trends.
writing.
That's all you have to do too. Just keep. I mean, we can't. I mean, I already. Yeah, I do have a dragon. I have a dragon. I'll go ahead and throw it out here. Everyone could steal my idea, but whatever. World War II. Okay, World War II. Germany is, they're flying their bombers over, but one of the bombs falls down this, accidentally falls down in this huge cave, awakens a dragon. So there you go. A dragon during World War II. That's what I want to write.
Nice.
So, Bob, I'll
Yes.
share. You shared yours. I'm gonna share mine.
What's your dragons?
So mine's a little bit of a dystopian one, but
Ooh,
it's sci-fi. There's a sci-fi twist to it where dragons were here on Earth, but they went extinct by the knights in shining armor, which were like humans, but not aliens, but they were off-planet humans. And that was their armor to fight the dragons. So they went extinct here on the Earth. On this one. But then they're having another war out in space, and they come back.
Ooh,
so
that sounds fun.
Well, while we're on it, our writing group is going to get to see their first dragon in my story in about 20 chapters. And it is actually
20 chapters. I want to see it now, Austin.
It's an alchemical experiment, genetic experiment, where they took a gecko and basically it gets fragments of the souls of everything that dies within a certain radius in order to feed it and make it bigger and stronger. And that's the birth of dragons in my world.
Wow.
A genetic alchemical experiment.
I want to be in your writing group just so you can hear all these cool stories. I have another dragon series, and that one's like pretty much, it's halfway done. So
nice.
I have an idea for one, but it's like stuck back there. I've got 4 books to go until I can write that one, because I need to finish my trilogy. And then there's a spin-off of the trilogy that has to be finished before the trilogy can finish. And then I can write my dragon book. But I stupidly today, I'm like, I wonder if I could find time to just write it on the side as like a Kindle Vela.
Ooh.
Then I was like, stop it. You don't. You don't have time.
You gotta try it.
Holly, just do a chapter a week.
Ooh,
and then just throw it out there.
I know.
Chapter a week, Holly.
Yeah.
You could do it.
Yeah, Kindle Vela is fun. It's relaxed. Like, I think I just published chapter 97 today. So just chill.
The fact you can get to 97 chapters is amazing.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I tend to write short, choppy chapters. So I think my first book was like 135 chapters. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing for me would be I'm like very much so a perfectionist. And so I would hate to release something and then go back later and be like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have released it. It should have said this instead, or this would have been better. So I'm a plotter, not a pantser. So
that's the nice thing. Have an outline, and then you can go back and edit the old chapters. So it's fine. It's fine. I changed the gender of one of the characters like 30 chapters in. It's fine. It was
all that radioactive
experimenting.
Yeah, right.
Well, Jennifer, how many books are going to be in your Veiled God series before you write dragons?
So, gosh, this one actually. How do you know this one doesn't have dragons?
Well, there you go. It's an unreliable narrator.
Unreliable narrator.
And the narrator is a dragon. What the heck?
So there will be dragons in this book.
Nice.
Series. So it's gonna be I'm having so much fun with trying to figure out like what I'm gonna do with it, because I was telling my editor all my plans and she's just like, I have no idea how you keep anything straight with like all of the details that I have in there. And I'm like, well, it's the beauty of having ADHD is you're kind of hyper focused, and that's the one I can't remember my kids' appointments or games, and if it's not on my phone. So this is what I do with my brain. Wow. And anyways, but this will be 3 books. I'm hoping that like you, Holly, I might have a spin-off, so it might be 4. I'm going to try and like cram it into 3, but it'll be 4, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's really hard. For me, I want to have, it's part of like a huge plot twist that I had kind of planned out before. And so I just kind of, well, I could work it into the storyline, but I just felt like I could make a whole story out of it. And then I'm like, how much of my story do I want to sacrifice in order to just squeeze it in, into the trilogy? And then I feel like it would just be so obvious if, I have these same characters in my trilogy, and then all of a sudden there's like this whole other, section of things that I think it would just be too obvious is my concern. And that I would write a 200,000 word manuscript.
And you have to go and cut 50,000 of that.
Yes. Yeah. I was going through an editing recently, and I was up to like 109,000. And then I started doing all my edits and cuts, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've got down like 3,000 words. And I was like, so happy. And I was like, I'm going to be down by the time I get to like, by the time I get to the, like, I think it's like 68 chapters or something. By the time I get to the end, I'm going to be right around 100,000. And then I stopped looking. And then at some point, as I was rewriting and editing, I like looked when I was finished, and I was back up to 107,000. And I'm like, what happened?
Yeah, that's how my editing goes. So like my rough draft of my first book was like 55,000. And then by the time I had the finished book, it was 135,000. I was like, well, that's not how that's supposed to go.
Well, I feel like when you're going back, you're realizing, oh, I didn't flesh out the scene enough, or this is missing this emotion or this sensory, you're kind of going back and filling in the gaps that you missed. And then you're like, oh crap. But I actually cheated. And that was the beauty of, I say I cheated because that's awesome. But that's the beauty of self-publishing, is mine was so long. And I was like, actually, this one peaks here right in the middle. And I chopped it in half.
Perfect.
Amazing. Yeah.
Book 1 and book 2, which was why I was able to get out both of them within, 2 months of each other. So
that's awesome.
We should have you on again and talk about self-publishing, because I don't think we've talked about that yet. About
please.
The con, or there's cons.
Pros and cons.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pros and cons of self-publishing, but all of us right now, Holly is actually.
I'm living the nightmare right now. That is self-publishing.
No,
Holly,
I think
it's going to you right now.
I think it's just a lot of, and again, for me, like I love to deep dive on all my information. And so like, you go on one blog and you read this, and then you go on another blog and it says, but no, actually this. And there's just so much that goes into it, with like doing pre-orders versus launches, and where you should have what book coming from, and, Barnes and Nobles or Amazon or Ingram Sparks. And it's just like, trying to get it all sorted out. It's like, outlining a book. It really is. But, once you get it all together, then it's not so bad.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like it helps after I got my first book out, my dear, sweet, patient husband, 6 months of work, like pretty much absentee mom in the evenings. So I'm like, I'm on a deadline. And he's like, are you done after this? My husband does not read fiction at all.
Yeah.
He's never read any of my books, never read.
Yeah.
That's my
life. Just kind of like happily, like, you do your thing, I will do mine.
Right.
And anyway, so I was like, yeah, my second book's out. He's like, oh, 2 books, huh?
Oh, you're not done.
Well, honey, that I'm planning. And he's just like, he's like, hey, we need to come up with a plan here, because we can't live like this for the rest of our lives. And
yes, we can.
Self-publishing is difficult, but I finally realized, I'm like, okay, I need to pace myself.
Yeah.
And do some things before. Don't ever mention a date. I'll just tell you that right now.
Ooh,
unless you have printed books at your house in your hand, don't announce a date.
Okay.
It takes 3 times longer than what you will expect or plan.
That's true. Yeah.
But it's nice because I have one friend, her name is Shamile Saeed Mendez, and she's got so many books out there. It'll make your head spin. But she we were at her house talking, and she was talking about some of the frustrations that she has with traditional publishing. You know, she doesn't really have a lot of control over her books, over the cover art or the processes or even the deadlines. And so she's like, you kind of have to push back a little bit on some things, and some things it's just out of your hands.
Mm-hmm.
So with self-publishing, even though you have like the big headache of doing it all yourself, you also like, I'm looking at as I'm working really hard to keep my art mine. And, you know, and I feel like Shamile, like her work is so well done. Like they don't touch her book stuff a lot, like what's in her books. It's just more on the back end. But yeah, there's pros and cons to everything.
For sure.
So, how about cons for writing unreliable narrators? It's time for our don'ts.
Yeah, I like it.
Time for our don'ts.
So, for don'ts. So, you have to be careful with the miscommunication trope with unreliable narrators, because if they are like lying, obviously it's going to come out in a certain way that whoever they're interacting with, that they, you know, might take umbrage to it, or they might be ticked off about it. So you really kind of have to be careful not to play into that. Instead, you really, I feel, because so many people across the board just really dislike the miscommunication trope. Like for me, I feel like that's more of a young adult. Like you can easily play that up in young adults, because teenagers, you know, they're not mature enough to have a conversation if something bothers them. They're just like, well, I'm writing you out of my life forever.
Right.
You did one thing to bother me and you are done for life, you know? And I feel like there's a lot of immaturity in that, and that's great for YA. But if you were writing new adult or adult, which is what the Veiled God series is those conversations do come up. And it's interesting. I feel like you can kind of get away with it, unreliable narrator, if you have certain things that block, like roadblocks between the characters. So such as, you know, someone that won't let you speak to that person, or, you know, so you can kind of play it up where it's not necessarily miscommunication, but just lack of opportunity for communication. And, but I would have to say, just be very careful on how you laid out, because you don't want your narrator to be like a liar, because then they're not necessarily, as a reader, you're not necessarily gonna like them. So you kind of want to keep it a little bit hidden, keep them a little bit likable. You know, obviously everyone has their own reasons, but I feel like if you spin too much on that, then it becomes annoying for people, because it's like, well, get over yourself, you know, move on. Change the topic, you know. So so that would be my don'ts. Just keep it moving.
I'm going to go ahead and follow that up. I think my don't would be, don't feel like if you're using an unreliable narrator or thinking about using an unreliable narrator, don't feel like it has to be like a big twist or even super involved. Like if you're writing a story where the narrator is a character, or it's close POV where you're following the character really closely, it can be small things, just because that's part of the way that they see the world. And that's just part of characterization at that point. And that's just good. Like, I feel like it's part of their voice to maybe not know geography or how their government works, or, hey, I think that person's in charge, but I don't know. Like, those are just part of the world that they're living in. And it might be wrong, which is where if you get into multiple POVs, you can really expose that thing where it's like, oh yeah, I'm pretty sure this dude's in charge. And then like you get another person's perspective and it's like, nope, that dude's in charge. Or like even how they view themselves can be really important. And so like showing the difference in how the different narrators see each other and see themselves. So
it's funny when you started talking about that, I was like, oh my gosh. Sometimes I feel like when I'm talking about my work, I skip over a lot of things but until like after the fact. And then I'm like, crap, I should have mentioned this. But on that note, Austin, I think it's great when you have like a narrator that is like, you do know as a reader, you do know something that they are hiding, and but they're just kind of like, crap, I'm in this pickle, but how do I get out of it? And then they kind of convince themselves like, okay, this is what's going to happen. And this is like, it'll be okay. It'll be okay. You know, so they're kind of like, you know, they're kind of reassuring themselves. And as a reader, you're like, it's not going to go well.
Well,
And then oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say one common way that I do it is like, it's very clear that everybody thinks they're the good guy because I do like combating factions all the time. They can't all be the good guy, and you know that. So you know they're all unreliable because some of them are bad. Maybe they're all bad, but they can't all be good. So it's just like this idea of like the morality being the unreliable bit.
Yeah. I feel like there's a little bit of gray, but also I feel like you could use that like pure morality that can shift into, because you have to have like character arcs, and a story would be boring if they just stayed the same. So what I really like is their internal compass is the same, but they're having all of this outside, external pressure. They have their internal pressure that's, that they're stressing about, but then they have all this added external pressure that they really kind of, it's like, okay, am I shifting that moral compass to kind of fit, like you're trying to essentially be a people pleaser in the way that you're trying to get out of this pickle that you're in, but you're trying to convince yourself. And I feel like that could be a good tool to use as a unreliable narrator. So
I think for me, I'm going to say, don't be afraid. Well, not don't be afraid, but don't forget that while you're dropping these cookie crumbs, if you leave some bigger ones that people are going to get right away, then don't forget to also leave some small ones that they're maybe not going to pick up on as easily. Because once once your book gets around and people know that that's the style of writing that you're doing, they're going to be looking for those clues. So you want to give them something so they feel like, oh yeah, I found it. Look at me go. But then at the end, they look back and they're like, I did not find all of these cookies at all. And then it's a good way to like throw them off the scent, right? Because if they're looking for something, they need to find something so they feel good about it, but then you also still want to have enough hidden away that when you have that big twist, that it's still a surprise for them.
I like that. Last but not least, I will go with, as far as we're dropping cookie crumbs with your first draft, I would say drop all the cookie crumbs you want. I feel like it's better to add in more to overwrite than, for you to try to think of, okay, I need to write some more. So in your first draft, write all the cookie crumbs you want. And then when you go back through there, because we all do, probably 25 times or something, but you'll be able to see like, okay, yeah, like kind of like what Holly was saying, this is too big, this is too small. And then you can adjust it, you can pull them out, and maybe you just have, maybe one or two, like really, they should be obvious. But I just feel like it'd be easier though. That's all I'm saying. So don't restrict yourself when dropping the cookie crumb. Just feel free to throw all of them out.
I will say, if you are a pantser like me, don't be afraid to not leave any cookie crumbs the first draft and then be like, oh, I figured out what they're hiding 90% of the way through this draft, and then go back and add your foreshadowing. It's really easy to add foreshadowing once you know what's going on.
Yeah.
I've done that, Austin, like all the time.
So it works both ways. It just depends on how much you as the author know the first
reverse
draft.
effect.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I like it.
Well, Jennifer, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for jumping on with us. It's time to say goodbye. Where can we find you again?
So you can find me on Instagram. It's where I'm most active on. It's Jennifer Maughan, author.
Okay. Jennifer Maughan, author. She's got 2 books out, Veiled Gods. Both of them are available on Amazon. There's one. She's holding a copy up right now. And she's got
those covers do look amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Hidden details even in them too.
Amazing.
So they're fun. Gotta have the cookie crumbs.
Yes.
And everyone go follow Jennifer. Everyone go follow Moonfade Books, where you can find Kevin. And let's all bug him tonight about sprayed book edges that we need next week.
Yes. Right. And Melissa, my cover artist, hers is Book Lure. So BOOKLURE.
Okay, Book Lure for Book
Melissa. Yeah, she's great.
All right. Well, that's it for tonight. Don't forget to subscribe to our channels at the links below so you don't miss any of the Writers Room content. We always love to hear from our listeners. So if you have a question or topic you want us to dive into, please get in touch. We will have Jennifer on again because we have to talk about the pros and cons of self-publishing, and that's a huge, huge topic. And we want to help our new writers out as much as possible. So, but yeah, that's it. That's it for tonight. Thank you, Jennifer, for joining us. Have a good night. We'll talk to you guys later.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.